Okay. Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody stayed dry today. It's raining here pretty good, but I'm happy to see it. Um, we need it. And we're so happy to have tonight Sherman Thacher, owner, winemaker of Thacher Winery. If you've not been there, you should go by and check it out. They got a nice facility and uh, really good wines. So you should give it a try. Put it on your list the next time. And before I turn it over to Jason, I just had one question. So what's with the grasshopper, Sherman?
Well, yeah, I basically back when we were putting the label together, I used to go in the wine room at the place I used to work, and I'd go up and down and look at the wines really quickly, and the wines labels that stuck in my head the most were actually usually the most elegant ones that had the least amount of stuff on them. But back when I first started making wine, there weren't cell phones. I started making wine in '93.
What?
Yeah, and so I just kind of realized that there was too many times I went out to dinner and was recommended a wine, and I got home and I had no idea what it was or who it was from, and so we realized we had to have some kind of logo, and so the grasshopper is on the family crest and the coat of arms for Thatchers, and being the people who fabricate thatched roofs in England or in Europe. So if you go to the Thatcher coat of arms, there's grasshoppers. So we just stuck
Excellent.
with that.
And I
I
understand
like the label.
since that decision, I understand you've been getting a little bit of grief about the fact that they're a vineyard pest.
Yeah, that has happened, but not that much flack. There's more people who are just kind of freaked out by grasshoppers, but a lot of people think they're good luck, and I don't know. It's a mixed bag, but I had to go with the family the logo, so we just decided to go there.
I like it. I like
My,
the
my
visual
my wife
reference
my
to it.
wife can't stand grasshoppers. So anyways, that
But
is
she likes the wine, and that's
she
all that
likes the
matters.
wine. She doesn't. We just put a piece of duct tape over the.
There you go. Exactly.
So I don't want her to have like a nightmare. So, anyways, I'm going to hand it off to Jason, and we'll get going.
All
Jason,
right. Thanks, Mike. Did you start the recording, Mike? I didn't see the notification.
yeah,
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining. Sherman, thank you. It's nice to meet you. I've been to your place many times and I've always enjoyed it.
Good
Um,
deal.
so tonight we're going to chat a little bit about you personally. We're going to try not to talk about wine for the first few minutes. That's always kind of hard to do. Um, and then we'll kind of transition into the business if that works for you.
Absolutely.
Um, and as a former beer collector, I think the start of this might be fun because I understand that was your early start was in beer.
Yeah, so right out of college, my buddy who also was my first partner in winemaking, but he got hired as a brewmaster down in Los Gatos, and he had a guy in mind that he was going to use because I was busy kind of pursuing what my major was, which had nothing to do with brewing, and wasn't hearing anything back. And he called me one day and said, "Hey, this other guy's not going to work out. Maybe you could come up and be my assistant for a while." And I said, "Oh yeah, that sounds amazing." So I promptly packed a bag and was on his couch like a day later, and yeah, started working in Los Gatos at the brewing company in '92. It opened, so July
That's what it
'92.
was called, the brewing company.
It was called the Los Gatos Brewing Company.
Okay, got it.
So and it switched hands, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago or maybe longer, but it was open for about 25 years, and I was there for about 14, making mostly German style lagers. So but we did make the whole rainbow. We did lots of ales as well, but our focus was lagers. So we'd have a lager, a pilsner, a dunkel, doppelbox, and we also had a German style hefeweizen on year round as well. So
Got it. Um, you mentioned your major that you didn't do anything with. What was your major?
International relations. So economics and poli-sci and yeah, like almost like a minor in French, which I'm not that good at anymore either. So, but anyway,
Have you found an opportunity to use anything that you learned in that major?
maybe just a little bit of the French, but that's about it.
And well, I'll come back to that because I think you guys did. You're one of the early ones to do a wine tour in France, right?
Us?
Yeah. Did you do a wine tour? Take your club somewhere?
No, we did. We've done one tour and we had a second one scheduled, which happened to be in the middle of COVID, so it got canceled. But the first, and that was going to be in France, but we were going to go down from like Lyon down to Avignon, but
That's right.
we
That's right.
that one didn't happen, and the one before was left from basically Rome and went all the way up to Istanbul and back. So we did Greece, and yeah, it was super fun.
Wow, amazing. Um, the the brewery, um, Los Dados, you said, right?
Yep, just
And
outside of San Jose.
I'm sorry, just outside of San Jose.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was so when you weren't doing the beer back in those early days, did you have any other hobbies, preferred ways to spend your free time?
Back then, I did play a little bit of golf. um, at, at golf these days just takes too much time. It's it's a 5 hour project pretty much, and it's so I've kind of veered away from that. But I did that, and I did sneak away and do some fishing, get up and do some skiing. But yeah, I basically started making wine the following year. So the guy I was making beer with, Jeff, had basically he studied two things at Davis: fermentation science, which is more kind of geared towards beer, and then enology and not really so much viticulture, but at Davis as well. So he had done harvest at a couple of wineries up in the hills, and so the following year in '93 we bought our first fruit, and so that started to consume some time as well.
Yeah. So the beer, you're gonna let me close out the beer chapter real quick.
Yep.
You do that for 12 years, you said?
I was there from '92 through 2006.
Oh wow, okay.
Like 14 years.
Yeah. And it sounds more kind of old world beer styles than kind of the craft beer movement that happened here. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think, these days it's, the basically what people are drinking changes very rapidly. And
Yeah.
luckily, when you're a brewery, you can switch and do something else pretty quickly as well. Oh, we're going to brew a hazy today, and then tomorrow we're going to, oh, someone now they like brown ales. We're going to start brewing out brown ales the next day. But, obviously that's not possible in the wine industry because you're making stuff 2, 3, 4 years out. So, but I think back then there was not as much experimenting. People were kind of making more classic styles,
Yeah.
and so we stuck with that for the most part, and we did as many of the German style ones we could, and then we also did a handful of ales. So
I I read the comment that you made about which I can relate to. How big the IPAs can get, and some of the other craft beers in particular get really big, uh, and a hot day, especially in Paso, that can be a tough go-to, tough to kind of get down. It's not necessarily as refreshing as maybe a lager or a pilsner.
exactly, and that's kind of the theme I've been taking with our winery as well. It's after working through a lot of those bigger beers, one day basically I opened up the beer fridge in the winery, and I opened it up and looked deep in there, and it's packed with beers, and I didn't see a single one I wanted to drink. I was like, oh my gosh, I just need a Coors or a PBR or something, and anyway, there is a place for those lighter beers, and obviously nice, flavorful, handcrafted ones are great, but they're not always what you want after you've been sitting on a track for, in the sun for 3 hours. So
So that's what I was wondering about, is to what degree that informed your winemaking approach, because I mean, it could be a matter of you just had thought fatigue, even from wine, and wanted to transition, or if it was just a direct transfer from your experience in beer to having something a little bit lighter, fresher.
well, yeah, I think it wasn't, the first wines I came out of the gate with, I got down, when I got down here, I was kind of just mimicking what everyone else was doing. So definitely making some bigger wines. But yeah, as I said, it was probably around 2013 or 12 or 13, 14, somewhere in there. We actually, I know we're deviating into wine here, but
Okay.
we had made a sparkling wine. And so I'd picked it super early. And I had my buddy up in Santa Cruz do the terroir bottling and do that work, but I made the still wine. So I picked it early, lots of acid, low bricks.
What grapes?
I think we picked it around 17 bricks. So
And Chardonnay, Pinot,
Viognier.
Viognier. Oh, sparkling
Yeah.
Viognier. Okay.
Yeah. So basically that year we were a little bit backed up on our whites, and I was under contract and I needed to bring it in. And so I said, all right, well, let's bring it in. We'll just make something different. And so that was the call. So we picked it a lot earlier. And anyway, we shipped everything we could fit in one tank up to Santa Cruz. And my buddy did the terroir bottling it, and it sat up there for a little while. And in the meantime, we had one drum that didn't fit in that lot. And so we kept the stainless drum for about a year and just figured, we'll make a non-vintage something or other the following year. But as we tasted it through the year, I was like, wow, this is exactly what I should be making, not these kind of bigger, viscous, oily Viogniers. I should be making Viognier like this that has natural acidity and all the components of a wine that I really like. And so that actually was a big turning point for me, tasting that, just going, what am I doing picking these things so ripe? It's these things are so naturally balanced if you pay a little more attention to them. And it's definitely more in style with the type of wines that I enjoy drinking. So food friendly wines, and yeah, a little bit lighter, more elegant. So
Yeah. Well, one last non-wine question, and then we'll make the complete transition. What is your favorite non-wine adult beverage?
well, it probably would be beer. I mean, I can't lie. I've got a kegerator in the winery, and good friends with Matt down at Firestone, and so it's we're pretty
And a
spoiled.
multiple winner in the blend contest too, right?
Yep, I'm tied with Russell from Herman Story. So we actually, it was kind of funny. We both had 3 wins, and I think it was 2 years ago. We looked at each other and we're like, maybe we should just sit down together so neither of us can pull ahead. But Matt promptly pulled us apart. But yeah, we're super spoiled to have Firestone Walker here in town and have access to those beers, because they are all very well thought out and
And I
pretty.
love how he integrates you guys into that
Yeah.
anniversary process. That's pretty cool.
And we did a
So,
small project with Firestone kind of at the beginning of their sour beer program that they run out of Buellton. I had been kind of harassing Matt a little bit about, we got to do some kind of hybrid thing. I especially during harvest, I use a basket press, which isn't super efficient. And, some of those press cakes are fairly juicy and still have a fair amount of wine in them. And, it was always kind of a bummer just tossing those out in the vineyard. And I could always just repress it a little bit harder, but we kind of got what we needed out of it. So eventually he just kind of said, go over to the winery, talk to this guy, Dustin, who's his assistant or head wine or brewer at this point, but and he'll set you up. So we actually I went down to the brewery with a tote and got about 100 and I think 70 or 80 gallons of fresh wort right out of the brewery, brought it back here. And as soon as I got here, I loaded it in a fermenter, dumped my fresh press cake that just came out of my press that day. And it was Zinfandel. And it immediately started fermenting again. And I punched it down for about 2 or 3 more days, threw it back in the press, pressed out that liquid, barreled it up, and then had it shipped down to Firestone in
Is it
Buellton.
WeldWorks? Is that what it is?
It what do they call it? Brew. I don't even remember what.
Their sour program. I thought it was like WeldWorks, but I might have it wrong.
Something works.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it was interesting because it was more like a beer, but it had so much wine influence. It didn't actually taste great at the time because the pH was so high. It was like the most flabby of wines you could ever imagine. And so, it really needed to have that lacto and pedo and all those, spoiling bacterias go in there and do their work and start creating a more acidic cetobacter or whatever they put in there to create a more acidic beverage, and it brought it back into balance. So, but
Thank you, Jesse. BarrelWorks.
Barrel Works, yeah.
Yeah. WeldWorks is a different brand, I think, altogether. Um, so Jeff, I believe was the gentleman's name that you were working with in the beer business that transitioned you to wine. Is that accurate?
Yep, Jeff. So Jeff Alexander was the guy I went to UC Davis with, and he was hired as the brewmaster at the Brewco. And then after about 4 years, he took off to open a winery up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I stayed on. But in the meantime, he and I started making wine as a side project. And shortly after, I think after our second vintage, we're looking at a couple pallets of wine, wondering what the heck we're going to do with all this stuff. Initially it was just kind of to drink and have fun with and give away, but it was kind of a big pile. So we decided we better actually go pro and get a license. So we got what's called a 1720, which allows you to sell wine wholesale to restaurants and also operate an internet store. And we went and started knocking on doors and selling our wine when we had a day off. And the worst thing was I'd get a call from a restaurant while I'm in the middle of a 10-hour lager brew, and they'd say, "Hey, we're out of your Zin, can you come up right now and drop some off in like Palo Alto or something?" And I was like, "Oh my God, no." So I'd have to jet home, go get the wine, then jet up and drop it off at like 10 o'clock at night or whatever. But we did that for about 10 years.
So sold through that first few pallets from the first vintage.
Yeah. So we got through that, and we made wine up through I think 2001. So, and we've kind of bounced around the Santa Cruz Mountains making wine at various wineries, and we'd be there for 1, 2, 3 years, and then they'd get sick of us being around and needed the space back, and we'd be served our papers and would promptly go knock on another buddy's door and say, "Hey, can we take a little corner of your winery?" So we were our first 2 vintages were at what was called Congress Springs at the time, but it is now called Savannah Chanel, and in the interim it was also called Mariani Winery, but it's just above the Paul Masson, the old Paul Masson winery, going up Highway 9 out of Saratoga. So we were there for a couple of years, and we actually made wine from the fruit right there on property, which was an old head train dry farm vineyard planted in 1910. And so we got pretty spoiled with fruit right off the bat. And then we bounced over to David Bruce, and we probably did our longest term over there. They're a Pinot producer, but we were making Zin, a little bit of Petit Syrah, and then we started making some Chardonnay from another little plot up there. So, and then eventually actually that David Bruce himself kind of handed the reins over to his wife, and things started changing dramatically at that time. And so we bounced across the street to Byington, which is right down the road, and then eventually back to Savannah Chanel, where I made actually my first 2 vintages for Thacher. While we had purchased this place, and I'd bought fruit down in Paso Robles, but I hadn't. We didn't have any facility down here, and I hadn't moved. I was still kind of working at the brewery a little bit. So
You remember in your early days of getting into wine, first bottle that really made you think differently about wine?
it kind of I've thought about that in the past, and really there isn't a particular wine, and it's yeah, I can't say there's anything in particular that swayed me one way or another, other than making that sparkling wine that one year, where that really kind of transitioned all the wine I was making into a whole different direction, really. So,
No, but
but
no other label or wine that you ever had that was kind of an aha moment for you, or that made you really
I've
fall
heard
in
a
love with
lot of
wine.
interviews where people are like, this bottle, this and that,
Yeah.
and, just wasn't one where it just took me off guard, but I don't know, maybe I'd tried so many different wines by then, it just everything tastes slightly different. And I do appreciate that, and we certainly do a lot of experimenting. So um but there
So
was,
then your first vintage was 2001, did you say?
for Thatcher's 2004. My first vintage up in Santa Cruz was 93.
Okay. So wow, so you had a good decade in almost before starting your own label.
Yes. Well, my second new own label. Yeah.
Right. The current label.
Yeah.
Got it. And so what you do, so many unique things. Matter of fact, I'm really enjoying this relative stranger.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, wow.
I mean, talk about unique. Like there's what roughly 10 varietals that most people have never heard of.
Yeah.
That
So,
you're
um, I mean, that was kind of we had bought our property in 2015 over off of Kyler Canyon, and we got to a point where I was feeling happy here, but we only had about 5 acres here on the winery site. So I was thinking, oh man, we need to do something more. And so we planted another 15 acres. And while we were putting that vineyard together, I kind of got the varietals that I wanted. And I just couldn't come up with one I really thought would be a great idea for the very top block on the property. So I was talking to my assistant at the time, and we both thought, maybe a full out field blend, which is, it's kind of like a non-traditional field blend because it's fully planned from the beginning. I mean, a lot of those old field blends, you plant Zin, and as they die, you start planting Petite or something else. But this one, we went in, we picked 11 different varietals, and a lot of them were kind of old heirloom California varietals that had kind of gone by the wayside as Cabernet, became popular, and old blocks got ripped out here and there. But it has been an interesting challenge farming that, or making that wine. We experiment pretty heavily with it every year, and it's
Can
only
you, off the top of your head, this may be an impossible question. Off the top of your head, could you name all the varietals in the 2022?
no, I don't even remember. I've got let me see if I can bring it up on my phone. I yeah, my memory is pretty
It's an
bad.
unfair question because it's a lot, but I'm also thinking if it's a field blend, maybe you know all the.
My question would be like, how do you just start experimenting and then you percentage wise until you get where you want to be? Or
So
I don't know what's on the wine. I don't know what varietals are in there.
Okay, so we've got Grand Noir, Mencia, Mission, Mongoose, Mortal, Negrette. We've got 2 white wines, or whitish wine. We got Orange Muscat and Traminer. We have Pellerson, Trousseau, and Valdegay.
Huh.
And so everybody raise your hand if you've ever had that blend before.
So, and we kind of did the same thing on our our winery property. We have now a white field blend, and just arbitrarily have 11 varietals in that as well, and a couple Grees basically as well. But that one we got our first big harvest off of this last year. We got almost 3 tons out of it, and we're pretty excited. It's already tasting really interesting and fun. But that one has Aryan. These ones are a little bit less obscure, just because there weren't as many available, but also heirloom California white wines that we were able to really get our hands on, that we weren't, Chenin, I guess we could have put in there, but we're already making a Chenin Blanc. But anyway, this was kind of more Mediterranean. We have Aryan, Albarino, Macabeo, Semillon, Colombard, Chasselas d'Or, Grenache Gris, Trousseau Gris, Claret Blanche, Petite Mentang, and I don't even know. I can never say the word, but the Zalarlo or whatever is the X. I don't even. I can't even say the word, but
You make me feel better about it.
I had to start looking some of these up because I didn't even know. So
Right.
where did you source all these?
oh my gosh, it's the rabbit hole of Foundation Plant Services at UC Davis. So I don't know if you've ever gone to that website, but it's super fun. I mean, I was actually on it today, digging around, looking at some other stuff, but it's just super interesting reading about all these different varietals, and then you end up on Wikipedia, and then then you look at another name under Wikipedia that whatever you were looking at is called, and then you click on that and it takes you somewhere else. But yeah, UC Davis Foundation Plant Services is basically, they have a couple different vineyards that are basically libraries of material, and so they have 1, 2, 3 plants, and they're scanned every year for viruses. They all went through a certain, most of them went through one treatment or another to ensure that they were clean when they were planted. And basically it's first come, first serve. So you hop on there and see how many cuttings you can get, and then you make the best of those cuttings. So
Wow.
So what's the blending process like with 11 different grapes? I've seen the kind of traditional test tube blending, but holy cow, like,
well, so I on purpose planted it in a way where they were not separable. So we didn't plant like 1 row of Mission, 1 row of Valdegay. We interplanted it completely. So the blend is already made.
wow.
So what we can do to change things is basically alter our pick dates. And
Right.
so we'll pick,
Earlier, I'm guessing for you.
well, yeah, but also we'll pick the block in 1 or 2 or 3 different picks. A lot of times by the time I get to the second pick, I'm like, I should just pull it all off. But I think this last year we actually had 3 different pick dates, and what that does is it changes the brick level, the acid level, and so you're making 3 different wines, and then we'll bring those into the winery and we'll do those differently. And especially for the red field blend, a lot of those varietals have natural tannin, like a fair amount of natural tannin. So we had kind of gone pretty heavy on whole cluster initially, and now we're kind of peeling that back. And the most amount of whole cluster we did on it the last year was basically, we did 1/3 of it carbonically, so that is whole cluster. But then the other stuff we destemmed, and then some of it we split the carbonic fermentation into 2 different, and we did half of it hot, not hot, but in our barrel room, our tank room where we process, which is a little warmer, and then we left the other half of it in our barrel room, which is kept at around 60 degrees, 58 to 60 degrees, and it got a colder fermentation, and then just like a white wine had a lot more aromatics, and was a little less tannic just because it didn't get so hot. There wasn't as much, extraction because of a heated fermentation, whereas the one in the other room got a little bit more tannic, a little less floral, but also had some nice fruit tones to it.
So this
That is,
process and the way you grew and blended these grapes, had you ever seen that before, or is that just your
well,
own unique idea?
I mean, you look at like some of Ridge Vineyards, old vineyards, and they've got some amazing diversity in a couple of them, and their wines have always stuck out for me. They've they can last forever, and Zin, they make a fair amount of Zin, and Zin isn't a varietal that typically ages really well. I usually
Right.
just say drink it now, we'll make more kind of thing, but I mean, Ridge is, especially with their field blends, if you look, it might be 95 or 92% Zinfandel, but they've got Carignan, Petit Syrah, Grand Noir, Alicante Boucher. So, just that small percentage of those other varietals, I feel like it really, ties those wines really together, and makes them into something that can taste great, in the early days, but also really last a long time and taste great into, 20 years later plus.
so,
So
so for
Ridge, I
that,
imagine you had good exposure to Ridge up north.
so for
yeah,
that,
we actually got the first time I ever had Alicante Boucher. I think I might have traded beer or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but we decided we wanted a little bit, and we went up, and the assistant gave us, I think, 5 gallons of Alicante Boucher out of their cellar, and we that might have gone into my 95 blend or something. I don't remember, but yeah, we definitely tasted some Ridge, and knew a couple of the guys that worked over there
Yeah.
when I was in the brewing company. So
That's a cool property up there, up in the
so
mountains.
how many cases did you get of that blend?
the Relative Strangers.
Yeah. What,
Um,
what are you drinking, Jason?
Yeah, the Relative Strangers of
Relative strength.
2022.
Okay.
what does
Okay.
it say
Yeah.
on the back?
It says
Uh,
144 cases.
Yeah. It's unique.
Yeah, it's
Now
and
I
it's
wish
really
I
good. What
now I wish I
what?
went to get mine.
Well, you got something to look forward to.
Should have driven up to the locker.
Right? It's really good. And how long would you put the life for this to be? Like,
Well,
how long can you sell?
I think that one is going to hold together for a long time. And I actually really look forward to tasting that in 10 or 12 years, to just see how it's integrated, and how things have come together. Because as I said, the first couple of vintages we made out of that block were fairly chewy, and they needed
Yeah.
some time, but they are starting to mellow and become more approachable. And so, but that being said, also, in year 2, 3, and 4, we've started, we sadly, harvest only comes once a year. So you can only do so many experiments in that one year. And then you just got to wait for the next year, but you got a whole year to figure out which one you think is going to work the best. So anyway, we've been changing it, and eventually it might take 6-7 years before we're happy, super happy with what we're getting, what fermentation techniques are going to work best for it. But I think with that block, it's always going to be a combination of different things, and then we'll put it together at the end. So
Yeah, I mean, it seems true to what I believe your style to be of. It's not an extracted flabby wine at all. It's relatively lean, but lacks no flavor. I mean, it's nice. Um, and I think what 13.7, if I remember, do you typically target an ABV, or just by the nature of your approach, they just tend to be a little bit lighter?
we I wouldn't say we target an ABV because there are some varietals like Graciano that typically hold its acid pretty tight, later into ripeness, and some of those varietals benefit being picked a little bit later, and then Zinfandel, man, that's easily one of the more frustrating varietals to make anyway. You talk to most winemakers and they most of them don't want to make Zin or have quit, but basically that varietal ripens so evenly in every cluster. You go out, you think you think it's one number, you might put the fruit back in it, soak it overnight, and see how far it goes up, but that's usually not even enough. And I think last year we processed the Zinfandel out of this one block, and we picked it just around 21 or just under, and it soaked up to 25. So you're often going to see Zinfandels much higher in alcohol just because they are hard to predict where they're at realistically, and you can't gauge how much sugar is bound up in those raisins that are in those clusters. Whereas you look at a Syrah cluster or something that's a lot more even, you have a much better idea of what the sugar is, and sometimes you actually nail it perfectly. But so those two varietals for sure are ones that you'll probably see a little bit higher alcohols for us. But we really like we don't. So our whole theme is to not make any additions. So we don't add any water. We don't add acid. We do all natural ferments. We do all native malolactic fermentations as well. We don't add nutrients, and a lot of times we'll bring in fruit, and every once in a while we'll run a yan on it, which is it tells you how much nitrogen is in the juice, and what, and I think they say around 300 I don't know, it's ppm or whatever is what is required for a solid fermentation, and we'll have stuff that comes in at like 70 or something. And but at these lower alcohol fermentations, there's a lot less for the yeast to work against. There might not be as many nutrients, but they're not working against alcohol. pHs sometimes are a little bit high, but for the most part, I've had a lot less stuck fermentations since we kind of migrated to making lighter style wines than I did in the early days when we were picking higher bricks and even using tons of nutrients, and it still wasn't pushing through. Whereas we rarely get anything stuck. It's usually just the Zin, which again is pretty natural for Zin to stick. So
I got to tell you, this is really nicely balanced, and it's 14.3. But I mean, it's not. Some of the Zins we get up in Paso, they're 15.4,
Plus.
5. This is not in your face, but the fruit is really delicious. And I kind of lost my palate for Zin for a while. Well, not everybody's making it anymore. It used to be the grape, and then now kind of backed off, and I kind of been moving more to Syrah. But when I catch one like this, I go, wow, this is really good. And I must have liked it when I was there because I bought some. So
What's the vintage, Mike?
19.
19, nice.
And
Yeah,
that was actually one of my more favorite, and probably one of our lower alcohol ones. But that wine in particular is super fun because it's a combination of 3 different vineyards,
right.
And they all bring completely different profiles to the table. We have the Willow Creek Vineyard, which is super high in acid and really amazing aromatics. We've that was called Will's Hills, and then we've got Bailey Ranch, which is certified organic, head trained. They're all head trained dry farm. They all basically farm similarly, but and there may not even be further than 4 or 5 miles apart from each other, but they all have completely different flavor profiles. The Bailey Ranch is usually pretty big wine, dark color, lots of structure, and then the Osgood Farms, which is out on Chimney Rock Road, out right behind Kukla Winery. He he has slightly higher pH, but it really, it becomes more approachable at those higher pHs, and it really ties the other two together. And the combination of the three is really fun. Kind of, it's making a blend out of 100% Zinfandel is a fun thing to do. So,
Sherman, just correct me if I characterize this wrong, at least from your perspective, but I think of kind of some of the early pioneers like Gary Eberly and that kind of crew around that time. And then shortly after is this group that kind of came in and I think I would say helped turbocharge the region. And it feels like you're part of that group. And I don't know
yeah,
if
I think I came in like 5 years too late or something. I mean, I'm good friends with a lot of those guys, but we just and I don't know. I'm not super social. I kind of just do my thing. I mean, I tell people I don't even check the mail. I just stay on the ranch and do what needs to be done. And but we I was around pretty early, and it was kind of funny because when I first decided, or when we first kind of realized Paso was a place we wanted to be, my wife and I were down here. She was finishing up school at UCSB, and I was still working at the brewery up in San Jose, and we'd meet here a lot. And so I'd made a couple vintages. This is in the early 90s, and we drove down, and we were like those tasters that come in right at 5 o'clock. But we rolled into Peachy Canyon, and Doug Beckett stuck his head out and he said, "Sorry, buddy, we're closed." And then my wife was right behind me, and she kind of stuck her head out, and he said, "Oh, well, actually, maybe you guys should come in." And yeah, luckily she stuck her head out. But anyway, I was there till 9 o'clock that night, back barrel tasting and doing all kinds of stuff. But that was kind of our first kind of wedge into Paso Robles. And yeah, it's been a great place to be. It's the people here are very helpful. One of the best things I did for myself when we first moved down, we started working on construction here in Paso, or at least trying to get through the planning commission. And I had made a couple vintages up in Santa Cruz, but had moved them down to a wine service facility here in Paso. And the cool thing about that was there's 20 wineries within this building, and we're all doing our own things, kind of puttering around. Some people had their own equipment, some other people didn't, but we could bounce questions off each other's if we had an issue. A lot of my oldest friends from here in Paso were in that building, doing the same thing, trying to figure out how to build a winery and when it was going to come together. But at least trying to get some wine out, so we had something to sell when that winery did open. So that was a real bonus for me, at least as far as meeting people, and just kind of seeing the generosity that people in this area have. And those guys still call me, like, "Hey, can I borrow a tank? Can I," and vice versa, "Hey, I'm a little bit short on this. Can you," so.
definitely part of the thumbprint that makes Paso
Yep.
unique and special is that level of support and cooperation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and a lot of winemakers, we talk to one every month, and they all talk about what's kind of different or unique about their wineries. But your approach really is, I mean, in a climate like Paso, it's harder to do the fresher, kind of lighter, low ABV wines. So I feel like, and especially with these really unique varietals you're playing with, that is something really different. I don't know anybody that's doing anything like it. That's pretty unique.
That's a
Do
new one
you
for me
have,
too.
yeah, I mean, amongst your peer group there, do you have any other favorites that you like to go taste or?
I don't get out much, as I mentioned, but so I don't get to taste that many wines. But we sell a little wine to Hubba Wines, and Riley does. I have been over and tasted her wines, and she does a really fantastic job. So, I definitely recommend trying. She, for the most part, makes wines kind of in a similar vein as ours. I mean, maybe not quite as diverse as far as
Yeah.
the radical varietals we're working with, but she gets a little fruit from our Kyler vineyard, and then we both source from out in Shandon at Shell Creek Vineyards. She gets Valgay and Shannon from there. We as do we. So, but yeah, I think she's doing a really fantastic job. I really do need to get out. I usually hear about wineries through my tasting room staff, because they get a little more time to bounce around. Or my assistant winemaker, her husband works over at Giornata, so
Italian varietals.
yeah. So, and he's in Tin City, so I think they both. My assistant Brenna spends a little time over there too, and gets to hang out and see what else is going on.
I highly recommend you come to the Meet Your Makers party on April 25th.
Okay.
There'll be 5 wineries there you can try their wine.
Shameless
Shameless plug, yes it was.
So yeah, and there's some other wineries and other like Chase Carhart, down in Los Olivos. I like some of the So Fresh stuff that Stoltman's kicking out. Those are super fun. And up north, Tegan, who does all the Turley stuff, but he's got his brand Sandlands, and he makes some really fun, elegant, kind of lighter style wines, and they're just they're fun to taste, and I like drinking those. I pull out a big wine, I'm like, oh, I can't do that. Oh, I can't do that, and so you kind of go through your wine cellar. I kind of feel like I need to box everything up in my wine cellar and start over again, because we're just kind of out of all the ones that are, the ones that you want to crack open on a nightly bit. So
Yeah, understood. So what's the most challenging part of making wine? And I know, by the way, just by contrast to beer, in beer you don't have to worry about what the weather was in a particular year.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what's
So yeah, with beer, I mean, all the raw ingredients are readily available, and the malt houses basically ensure that from one year to the next, your malt base is going to be similar to the previous year. Hops do move around a little bit, but usually, through a little formulation, you can kind of figure out how much you need to add with that. But with wine, my biggest challenge is nailing the pick. And it
Jesus. My chair's hung up, sorry.
The pick for me is critical, because if we're not going to make any adjustments in the winery, which is really what we're trying to do, it's got to happen within a couple of days usually, especially if we've got heat coming through here. So it can be pretty frustrating if you can't get a crew, but I am looking at weather so far out to make sure that I can adjust. And a lot of times I'll ask for a crew, and then usually it's okay if I cancel the crew because they have somewhere else to go, but that way I have it kind of tied up, and then if we need to go, we can go. So yeah, I'd say the most challenging part is picking on the right day. And that's why we've kind of reined it in and stopped sourcing from outside of the area, because there's too many times where it's smoking hot in Paso and it's smoking hot down in Los Olivos or something. We got a couple varietals down there. We got some Syrah out of that area, and we got some Pinot Noir for a little while too, down in Santa Rita. So, but it was just too hard, dropping off bins in the middle of a firestorm here, as far as, grapes coming in, and then having to go back the next day. It could take 2-3 days to get all your stuff from a different location. And in the meantime, everything here is going way past. So
yeah. I mean, that's the perspective that with a minimal intervention approach, you don't have the tolerance that maybe another winery would that's going to manipulate afterwards anyway, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, some of the bigger wines, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, a couple days or a week later, because you just add a little more water, a little bit more acid, and, you know, just adjust it back, and that's fine. But yeah, I've just found that the wines that we make, for me anyway, for the type of wines I like, picking them at the right moment, you really don't need to do much beyond that. It
Yeah.
can take over it from there, and you just kind of let them loose, and they might need a little nudge here and there. I mean, we still use sulfites to make sure the wine's clean, but for the most part, we don't have to make any additions, and they we have very healthy fermentations, and yeah, a lot of times malolactic, depending on the season, that might not finish up till the following year, just because it got cold. But for the most part, a lot of our wines are, you know, especially like this year being an earlier year, were stable and put away, you know, in December. So that was kind of nice.
So what just struck me, circling back to the beginning of this conversation, uh, you and Russell are tied uh, in the blending, the beer blending. You guys have the opposite approach for wine.
We absolutely do. I mean, I remember talking to Russell once. I'm like, "How's harvest going?" He's like, "Are you kidding me? I haven't even started yet." And I was, you know, oh my gosh, I'm like three-quarters of the way through.
Right.
But yeah, it's kind of funny going and making. I learned. I actually was one of the guys that got invited to do it the very first time they did that, and did it on and off. Sadly, in the early years of that beer blending thing, Matt organized it a little bit late in the season, and fruit was often coming in, and so people couldn't always make it. And now it's a lot more dialed in and organized, and he's doing it, you know, deeper into the summer, so, or earlier in the summer, so a lot more people are able to make it unless they're out of town or something. But I realized um, basically that blend is made by a whole bunch of winemakers here in Paso. And in order to win, you got to make a blend that is going to be judged appropriately by those people that are winemakers here in Paso.
Right. Right.
So, you know, and you're working with big beers anyway. I mean, you can't really, I mean, there are some leaner ones, but yeah, the style of the beer that has been the winner kind of constantly over the years has been, the profiles have been fairly similar. So, you know, we get in there and try and just make a beer that tastes like past years, more than anything really.
Yeah.
But that we also want to use because the beers that are provided change every year. So it's not always the same stuff,
That's what tests your skills as a blender.
yeah, as far as mouthfeel and texture and kind of weight, you're kind of looking for the same, and it's usually on the darker side. I mean, you could make a pretty big lighter colored beer, but usually they're going to have some of those darker notes in them. So
Well, so we know then that when you pick is one of the more difficult parts of making wine. But what's the most exciting part of making wine?
well, harvest, you know, I will, you know, in the early days, I used to get pretty anxious about it and was like, oh crap, there, you know, I'd see my first truck go by with picking bins on it and be like, oh no, here it is. But yeah, now I'm super excited. I can't wait to get into it. You know, I'm already, you know, the vines are all shut down. We haven't even pruned yet, but I just can't wait to see how the plants look this year. But we have some new blocks coming on. So our Mencia, we got enough to do I think a 350-liter barrel out of last year, but we should get a couple tons out of the block this year. It's all trained out, and so that's going to be really exciting. So yeah, just bringing in the fruit and doing, you know, that's when you're using all your machines and, you know, just trying to be as efficient as possible. And there's lots of things going on, and you're doing those morning walks every morning, you know, going out and testing. I go one way and Brenna, my assistant, goes another way, and we hit different vineyards and come back and smash everything up and have a little meeting, decide what we're going to do next. And then we start our day with whatever is already in the winery. But, yeah, it's just, lots of organizing and, lots of flavors and smells, and doors are all open and lots of sun. It's great. I really dig it. Music's pumping. So
Yeah, right. Well, so 21 was a really good vintage. 23 was a spectacular vintage. What's your prediction for 25 in February?
well, yeah, it's pretty hard at this point. As I said, we haven't pruned. We're a little light on rain right now. I'm here on the property where I just looked, we're at around 13 inches for the season. Average is usually around 24.
Well,
Last year we got a little more than 24. The year before we got, a ridiculous amount. But last year was a low year as far as yield. So I'm feeling that, a lot of the plants are going to kind of bounce back, and we might have a bigger crop this year. I think last year it was great having a low yield. I think a lot of people kind of appreciated that with the current environment. So we weren't too distressed about it either. But yeah, I think we'll have options this year. If we want to drop a little bit, we can drop a little bit. A lot of our fruit, I don't do a lot of dropping and trying to intensify things. I think the plants often can kind of self-regulate. Grenache produces a lot. Our Grenache is usually a little bit more on the elegant side anyway. You can still get amazing flavors out of these plants. If we don't irrigate much, I probably go lighter. I got to fill in a report for the state every year on how much irrigation water we use, and there, all these red flags started popping up saying this isn't a real number, and and so we stress our plants a little bit, I think, but it works. But yeah, I think it's going to be a great year. Every year I think it's going to be a great year. And you talk to winemakers, how was your vintage? It was the best ever.
right.
It's always going to be the best ever. So
Right.
but I am excited. We've got a fun team here at the winery. I haven't got an intern yet for this year, but I got a couple prospects, so we'll see
Good.
what
I think
happens.
Mike's looking for an intern opportunity too.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. You ready, Mike?
Yeah, that's something I could do in a scooter.
The
Yeah.
knees are good and ready to go.
Yeah. We do a lot of foot stomping. That's and people are like, why do you do that? Well, I mean, we do a fair amount of whole cluster, like with our Chenin Blanc. It's a pretty integral part of our process, because we will foot stomp it and let it sit on the skins overnight. That helps develop mouthfeel, and then we'll press it the next day. So,
Foot to mouth.
yep.
Sherman, I know we're running late on time, so I'll do a couple more quick ones,
Yep.
really quick, rapid fire, and then time permitting, maybe a couple of questions from the group.
Sure.
First question, and this is a popular one, so I don't want to forget it. A pro tip that you can share with us for your guidance on anything that you can think that would help somebody consume wine, how they buy it, how they store it, how they taste it, etc. What pro tip would you share?
Well, I mean, as far as storing it, just keeping it at a constant temperature is going to be the best always. It will last the longest that way. But I think as far as pro tip, I'd say don't be afraid to throw a little chill on a red, especially if it's a little lighter, more elegant, especially living in hot areas. I think most of us are from California. That can add a nice dimension. And then also, don't drink your white wines, super cold either. Let those kind of get closer to not room temperature necessarily, but cellar temperature, high 50s, rather than ice cold from your fridge, because a lot of those white wines can offer quite a bit more at a warmer temperature. And a lot of people, there's a reason why you drink Coors Light at 32 degrees, right? Because you don't want to taste anything. But a lot of these white wines really have a great profile, and they really start to open up as they get a little bit warmer. And so I think that would be my pro tip.
Perfect.
Is there a rule of thumb for how long you can hang on to the whites? Is it 2, 3 years? I don't know. I,
I
I
would
know
say,
I know French wines they're kind of built to hang on for a long time. But for me, see, my wife makes me buy a lot of white wine that I don't drink. I only like really red. But
yeah.
and then she goes, I want that, and then it sits here. I'm like, okay. But I look at them, I got 21s, 20.
I if you spin them around and see what the alcohol content is, a lot of those higher alcohol ones are going to fall apart pretty quickly, especially with white wines. I think the reds a lot can handle some age, but you look at a French white wine that needs to age 10 years before it it is consumed. It's because the alcohol is 12,
Right.
and the acid levels are dramatic in those things. I remember the first time I went to a wine tasting up in San Francisco, and there was a French producer there, and I tried their wine, and they were, some famous, I don't remember who it was, but and I felt like I was tearing up because it was like biting into a lime or something. It was so tart. And but something with a little bit more backbone and acid as far as white is definitely going to last longer. And that's why a lot of those old world wines are able to kind of hang in there, whereas us in California with a much warmer climate are able, often the wines are a little bit riper and kind of higher pH, and they just can't hold together as long. So I don't have a number because it really depends on it's not just acid. There's if there's any kind of structure that will also help keep things around. But
Right. I'll pay attention to that when I go into the fridge.
yeah.
Well, Sherman, last thing for you is want to give you a chance to talk about your club or anything else about the winery that you want to share with the group.
Yeah, so right now, we have a pretty standard club. We've got you can we ship twice a year, 6 bottles or 12 bottles on those shipments, so you can decide, and you get 20% off if you're a 6 bottle and 30 if you're a full case for each shipment. We do have a subsequent club we call Premier Club, and basically it is either single varietal, small lot, or kind of more obscure stuff. And our last Premier Club shipment, I don't remember exactly what was in it, but we'll ship out. We make a Mencia, we make a Cabernet Pfeffer, we make a Valdegay. What else do we have? Graciano. So we make some kind of more obscure varietals that you might not see in other places. So that is an option, and it's not obviously for everyone, because a lot of people don't want to drink stuff they've never heard of. But that's been pretty popular with some of the younger folks. And we actually on Fridays we do we call it Funky Fridays, and we'll pour basically a lineup from that club every Friday as an option. So we don't, if you want to come in and taste more conventional stuff, we have that as well. But on Fridays, we offer some more obscure stuff, and so we've had people coming over for that as well.
Have you done
Where do you
anything?
get all the? Oh, sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
I was just asking. So I was just looking. We were there in 2020, March of 22.
Okay.
We were out at the patio. It was real nice, beautiful vineyard view. And have you done anything different with tastings?
We offer a kind of more in-depth tasting. We call it a stables tasting. And during COVID, we have these stables down behind our tasting room that were basically just full of barbed wire and fencing posts and, crap. And so, during the months that we were closed, we got a roll off and got rid of all that stuff and poured cement. And so we have kind of a private tasting area. And what we do in there is we have kind of not one-on-one, but a group can get one of our tasting room staff to go in and sit down and do a sit down pre-poured tasting. And one of our, a typical situation for that would be pour a Grenache, a Syrah, a Mourvedre, and then try a Rhone blend, and then maybe try a library Rhone blend, and then talk about it and talk about, whether it's our fruit or stuff we sourced and where it came traditionally from. We have maps of all the wine regions on our wall in that room. So it's kind of an elevated experience. So we have that as an option. And that, I don't know if that was around, we were still kind of working on it, I think, in 22. So,
Well, yeah, because kind of coming out of the pandemic year. So it was,
no one
Where
not,
do you
no, not 2022. Sorry. But yeah, no, it was good.
where do
Obviously,
you source all these obscure grapes from, or the
well,
cuttings? Is
you
it
got to look around, and then we've been doing it for a while, so people are now calling us.
uh,
Like,
Talbot's Creek?
hey,
Was Talbot's the source at all?
no, they don't. I don't know if they sell their state fruit. I actually don't even know. I should know that, but I doubt it. I think they use it all. But yeah, I had a guy. The Onyx has some Vacares, and so it's Talbot's had made their first vintage of that in 2019, I think, and I got called, I think it was during the season even. Hey, I got an extra bin or two of this. I had no idea that was even planted anywhere else, but they had got it from the nursery that Talbot's Creek works with, and planted I think they have 5 rows or 6 rows, but we got that from them for 3 or 4 years, and super interesting grape. But yeah, it's you kind of got to look around. Sadly, one of the vineyards I was working with up in San Benito just changed hands, and it was kind of a source for a lot of wineries. I think like Jolie Lade gets some stuff from up there, and I saw all kinds of fun picking bins up there. Sourcing, and a handful of people from Paso were getting fruit from there, but they've transitioned after a rough year.
Yeah.
But we got Mencia, our Cabernet Pfeffer, and Negrette from up there. Really awesome Negrette. So it's going to be a shame not being able to get that this year. But again, that was another thing. A winemaker that he's a winemaker for Testarossa, which is right above Los Gatos Brewing Company. So I'd kind of met him back in the day in Los Gatos. And then also Kelly Bobbitt, who is known in this area for doing all the wine maps for everybody, for your vineyard maps. I've actually been communication with him recently because we had some updating to do, but he also mentioned the same vineyard up in San Benito, and so he actually hopped in the car. We went up there and poked around and started getting Negrette right off the bat, and then added Mencia and Cabernet Pfeffer. So. And now we've since planted our own Mencia block. So, as I said, we're super excited to get that this year. But yeah, just looking around, you keep your eyes open, and hopefully somebody either alerts you or you can sniff it out. So,
Well, it's worth a visit to come check out your stuff if you haven't been there, and try these really, really spectacular wines.
really, really interesting wines. Yeah,
Yeah.
different. Yeah, I like them.
one of the things, and I'll just kind of to finish on, it was another kind of beer thing, but I remember in my early days going into a brewery, and the guy poured me the whole lineup of 6 beers, and it went from light to dark, and I tasted through them all, and I just, in my mind, I was like, wow, how can these all taste exactly the same? They're completely different colors, you know? And so, you know, that was something that translated into my brewing, but also here I've been very adamant about as well is, you know, I really want each wine to be very specific to what it is. And so when we source fruit, we look for varietal traits that really are popping in that vineyard. And if we're making it, if there's a way we can kind of enhance those, we will, because I really want them, you know, I want people to taste through my lineup and know that each wine is completely different and not be tasting a Merlot and wondering if it's a Syrah, you know, it's
Yeah. Right.
So that's been kind of a priority for me to really, you know, either source fruit or produce fruit that that really showcases what each varietal can do. And we might accentuate it to a point that some people may not like it, but I think it's great. You know, we make we're going to bottle this Cab Franc, and it's wow. Talk about like Ortega green pepper chilies. You know, it's like,
Oh wow.
yeah, but I think it's going to be fun. So, but like Morved, you know, the really stinky Morved, I love. It's, you know, just having these characters jump out. It's I think it's important. So.
Let's open it up to our the people that are here and see if they have any questions. Anybody have questions? And remember to unmute yourself.
I
Delia?
do have a question. I am fascinated with obscure varietals, and my husband Michael and I have tried many different ones. You have some that we have tried,
including Jarello.
yes,
Oh, there you
and
go.
many others.
Yeah, I can't say that damn word. Every time I
Jarello.
get to it, I'm like, how do you say that again?
We did an A to Z, and that was the X line.
Yeah.
Jarello.
So it sounds like SH, Jarello.
Jarello.
And some we have tried. Some I have heard of and have never tried, like Negret and others. And others I haven't even heard of. So I'm very excited about it. So my question is, other than your blends, do you offer some of these obscure varietals as single varietal wines?
Yes. And most of them, most of the really obscure ones we do varietally, but not, you know, if and luckily, you know, if I've found an obscure varietal that isn't going to be a really fun standalone wine, usually it'll kind of work its way out of our program, because I think it's super fun having those. So we have 100% Negret, we have 100% Cabernet Pfeffer, we have 100% Valdiguez. We actually have two 100% Valdiguez. We do one in a Nouveau method, so it's kind of like a Beaujolais, because it does have a lot of similarities to Gamay. So we decided we're just going to make our Valdiguez that way and see what happens. And it's super fun. And then we'll also make the Valdiguez conventionally. So we have two different bottlings of that. We have 100% Mencia, Chenin Blanc, Graciano. So.
How about your Chasselas de Rey?
No, that is part of our field blend. So that is interplanted with all these other. So it would be very difficult to pull out. I wonder if I can find.
We had that in Sonoma. There's a winemaker up there who's, I think, Swiss, and he was doing that under his own.
Yes, but
It's
but
very interesting. Very interesting. Right.
I understand if you have it planted in the same vineyard together, it will be very difficult to separate.
Yeah, basically, when I made my field blends blocks, I planted them in a way where they were not going to be able to be separated, because because I knew I'd be tempted. Oh, well, maybe we should just do the Grenache Gris by itself and see what it's like. And I really wanted to kind of just have this as one thing and make this blend and figure out how to make it the best possible way, and then kind of keep it that way together. So
Grenache Gris is very good, by the way.
the what? Oh,
Grenache Gris.
So I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to hold this up to the camera, but this is what our Whitefield blend looks like
Wow.
like
Yeah.
this.
Wow.
You can see how the clusters are, and you can see the two different grees, but you can see how the clusters are completely different shapes and
Mhm.
sizes and colors. And
That's cool.
yeah, it's just it's kind of fun having something pre-blended for you already.
That's really interesting. Anyways, that's my comment.
We were we're gonna be coming south in the second week of March, and I think we need to extend to Friday so we can stop in for the Freaky Friday. Or
There you go. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'll be up there at the end of March. My wife and I are going to visit with some friends in Morro Bay, and they're already writing down names of wineries, potential ones to go visit. And I'm going, okay, now I'm going to throw this in there now.
There you go. Cool.
I'll reach out to you before we get it on the schedule, see what they're doing.
Yep. CC.
Anybody else have a question? Jason, I'm sorry. Anybody else have a question? Okay.
Well, Sherman, thank you for your time, and thank you all for
Absolutely.
joining.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's always
very interesting. Very interesting guest. Really good. I really like.
Sorry to jump in real late. Is it too late to ask one quick question?
No, not at all.
No, take your time.
Sherman, how do you like? Do you feel like wineries and restaurants are doing a good job of collaborating and trying in terms of trying to like boost overall awareness and sales? Obviously, there's a lot of like concern, I think, about how, you know, if wine industry is growing or shrinking. But do you feel like again, restaurants and wineries are working together well to try to improve that?
I think that is going to be a priority for this year for you know, both industries. You know, we get approached by wineries, our brokers and distributors will contact, but yeah, I don't know if there's enough collaboration. I think it would be really good if wineries, you know, because I'd love to get in and do staff trainings more often, because otherwise, you know, your bottle comes on the list and no one knows what to do because they might not have even tasted it. So I think education is really lacking in the America, and it's because, you know, partially because people don't start drinking till they're 21, but you know, when you're 12 and you know, it's part of your meal, you know, you're like, you might ask questions about it, but you know, by the time you're 21 and you haven't had a chance to really experience it, I don't know, it's kind of a different thing. And I don't know, it's for me, the way I make wine, it is a little frustrating as well, because you know, like cold stabilizing whites is completely unnecessary, but it's something you've got to do just for aesthetics, and it might be something that can take away from your wine, but certainly burns up a lot of power if you're gonna bring your tank down to 32 for 3 weeks. So
Wow.
but yeah, I don't know really how to answer your question directly, but I think, you know, we're planning and engaging restaurants a lot more this year, and really trying to do more of these events that kind of help everyone understand more about wine.
Excellent. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you, Sherman.
All right, Mike.
Wonderful. I'll come up there. I'll come up there and see you in March. And yeah, if you're ever in Orange County, let us know if you're down here pouring. Jason and I both live down here.
Okay. And whereabouts in, like, where would be a town in Orange County that would be near you guys?
Well, he's in HB and Huntington Beach. I call it HB.
Okay. Yeah. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah. But that's how cool people talk, you know.
Okay.
Anyway, he's in Huntington Beach and I'm in south of Irvine.
So I'm in the north tip of Orange County. He's in the south tip. So we cover Orange County.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll have updates on our website as things kind of get added. I know we're coming down for the Slow Wine event in LA. I think that's in the middle of April. And then Yeah, I've got a pouring down in oh
Ha-
gosh.
Have your
San Juan
people
Capistrano.
put that stuff up as an event in the group. The Facebook thing, the event thing, it's wonky to say the least. But the problem questions I always get is, why do I do not know about these things? How do you hear about them? Well, you literally have to go to almost every winery and get on their mailing list.
And it's free to
Yeah.
post in the group, and it's 24,000 custom made demographics for
Right.
Paso wine.
But, some of the wineries will purge you after a while if you're not a member, or so it's hard to keep up with all of it.
Yep.
And, everybody always asks me that. So that's one way to get the word out so we all can see it. So,
Okay. I'm not a poster, but I will have Tony or my wife maybe
Yeah.
talk to you guys about putting any events down at least down south. We don't do too many up north, but down south, we're going to be down a little bit. And
it doesn't matter where you're at, even if you're in West Virginia or Virginia, it doesn't matter.
we just posted one on our website and our Instagram today for a dinner I'm doing in Maryland. So
Yeah. We have members there. We're reaching out.
all right, cool. Well, we'll definitely take advantage of that. That'd be great.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sherman. Thank
Cool,
you.
I appreciate
I
it.
really appreciate your
I
time.
feel like we could keep talking for another 2 hours, but we'll do it again sometime.
We
Yeah.
will. We'll have you back.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Have a good night.
Let me stop this.